Hey everybody, I'm here with Gene Valentino with GrassRoots TruthCast, the best podcast in history. You guys are awesome. You're looking good. I knew you would. To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
With breaking news and political commentary from a public servant, serial entrepreneur, community leader, philanthropist, and American patriot, and a darn nice guy, it's time for the GrassRoots TruthCast and your host, Gene Valentino.
Today we have a very special guest. He's a GOP political strategist, he's an aviator, he's been in public office, and he's a friend of mine. Welcome, Gene Valentino.
Hey, David. Well, that friend of yours is a friend of mine, so that's the most important thing first.
Amen, amen, right? We love God and we love others. So today, ladies and gentlemen, you know, politics and religion, what we do is we take what's going on in the government and in our world, and we try to find solutions, not just complain about it, right? We try to filter everything through a biblical worldview, so it's not our opinion, but God's. Because in every scenario, either I'm right and you're right and I'm wrong, or we're both wrong and we need to seek God. So today, Gene Valentino is with us. And as you know, in America, we don't necessarily need more laws. We need to enforce the ones we have. But there are things that have been like Bill Clinton. What is, what is if? You know, he just screwed America by being such a dirty bastard and switching things around and playing on words and taking the Constitution and law and just abusing it by taking it far, 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 far away from the intent of what every rational person knows it says. And these liberals and these Democrats and these people who just don't care about anybody but themselves, they're ruining America. So Gene saw the problem and he came up with 11 amendments to the Constitution. So what Gene's going to do is he's going to go through what he's seen as the issues in America and how each of these amendments help solve the problem. There's tons of problems in America, but we still have the greatest country in the world. So Gene, I talked a lot. At this time, let's start off with number one. What's your First Amendment? What's the problem in America? And how will your amendment solve it?
Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks for having me. Let me call them up here on the screen so I can run through them in an orderly way.
Yep, and while Gene's doing that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see Gene's website, and you can go to his website at any time and then go right up in the top corner and hit Gene's second Bill of Rights, and it'll bring you right to the 11 Amendments of Accountability, and you can click on them and read them and be ready to go. So Gene, at this time, my friend, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you, buddy. We put these 11 amendments in place. At first, that was more tongue-in-cheek, and we'll just throw it down and not make a big deal about it. These are things that have to be done. What's happened since these 11 proposed amendments were written is that I became a contributor on Newsmax and other national outlets, and they took it to heart, and I realized I better clean them up further for them to get the national recognition they deserve. We have 27 amendments to our Constitution, and the problem is that the first 10 are what's called the Bill of Rights. So I affectionately refer to these 11 as Gino's second Bill of Rights. And these 11 amendments try to address everything that's in shortcoming in place now. You know, the 27 amendments to our Constitution talk about rights, entitlements, privileges, authorizations and clarifications, rights and entitlements like the woman's right to vote, like slavery, like the right of the limitation, I should say, to the rights of search and seizure, a distinction of clarification between authorities vested in the federal government and in the state government. These issues were not listed in the original founding document. It's amazing how the original Constitution itself has withstood the test of time. And it's because we put a safety valve in it to allow you and I to make amendments to it as need be over time. You know, the right of free speech in the press, then when the First Amendment was issued, is not the same right to free speech and press as we see it today, where we have social media, streaming services, and different what I'd call television broadcast platforms, including this one. We're putting together an episode through David's program, which he's invited me on, which is streamed. You subscribe to it. You get to look at it without worrying about Channel 3, Channel 5, or Channel 8 on your TV. The old-fashioned days of cable that have kind of gone by the website has made these cable companies in particular less interested in you as a cable customer of channels, but you a cable customer of a multitude of streaming services. So back on point, we created 11 amendments of accountability, and these amendments of accountability try to describe different things. The first one is the big one, and it's a reaction to what we're seeing on the news these last 4 to 6 years, and that's, what does it take to be a natural citizen, a naturalized citizen? If it's a person born in the United States, is a person who is born in any of the states in the nation or any of its American territories, and if that person has at least, in my opinion, this is a proposal, at least one parent that is an American citizen, that's what it is today. The person is required to take a certified course in American history or the equivalent before voting age of 18. Nothing in this amendment shall guarantee citizenship to a person born within the territorial borders of the United States whose parent or parents are not citizens. And the person born to persons who illegally or legally entered the United States after January 1st, 2000 shall not be counted as citizens of the United States unless they undergo some newly established standard for naturalization and a citizenship process, as they'd say. A non-naturalized citizen would be a non-naturalized citizen would be a citizen of the United States, and one that is not born in the United States or the American territories. So what we need to do is have Congress define what a naturalization process is and underwrite the quality and quantity of these immigrants. We call them illegal aliens or immigrants. But we need to qualify and quantify how many we're going to allow into our country. By the way, that's exactly what many nations in the world do right now anyway. This underwriting criteria for citizenship application and the application and acceptance will be within an annually quantified cap or limit within the budget process. We have to make sure we can afford to be bringing in all these people per year as defined by Congress. By the way, Congress doesn't do that now. They don't equate citizenship to any budget process. And as a result, it's increasing our debt even further because of healthcare services, Medicare, Medicaid, medical service in general, and housing allowances and other services that are provided to gentrify these people into our community. What we're saying is this: you can become a citizen of the United States if you follow a procedure. And that's the key. Are you following a procedure that is the same as the ones my grandparents went through? Italian immigrants, Irish immigrants that came into this nation. They waited in line. They learned English as the primary language. They learned basic historic facts. The first president of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, what's 1776? What was the Continental Congress? And on and on. What are the three legs of the American government right now? Are typical questions that are asked of an immigrant to pass the test to become an American citizen. David, I can go on with but that's pretty significant.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, the details are all on Gene's website, genevalentino.com, and you can read each detail and then reach out to Gene if you have any questions. But Gene, what we'll do is we'll just go over kind of a snapshot overview of each one, and we'll let people read the details on their own. But the point of the first one is to keep our country safe. Because my family came over from Italy, your family came over from Italy, and you said Ireland. And like my grandfather was so thankful to be an American citizen that even after he was in the army in Italy, he joined the American armed forces to show his gratitude towards the country. So the generations in the past came to America with gratefulness and thankfulness. And now they come with demanding and sucking our resources dry for the most part.
Yeah.
So this is really just a checks and balance. We're not saying we don't want immigrants. America was built on a melting pot of immigration, but we don't want to be foolish and give away our country like European countries are struggling with now, where they've lost their own identity and they're literally held hostage by terrorists in their own country. So that's what Gene's First Amendment does.
Yeah, right off my right shoulder, up on the bookcase back there, is an American flag, but that flag has only 48 stars in it, not 50. And the reason is it was given to me by my Italian immigrant grandfather who served in World War I. And that Alaska and Hawaii were not part of our nation yet. That came in the 1950s under the Eisenhower administration. But at the time, my grandfather, broken Italian immigrant, he couldn't write English, but he could barely speak it. And he became an American hero and saved about 14 American lives in France during the First War. The right to passage has a value, David. We are a constitutional republic that was founded in Christian principles, and it's these principles that have been the underpinnings of why the rest of the world wants to come here in the first place. So we're going to live up to those principles, and we're going to make sure that folks coming into this nation in the future do as well.
Amen. All right. And then what about your Second Amendment? Talk about what's the overview of it?
Yeah, it's called citizenship voting accountability. So once we define who a citizen is, who should be legally voting? Right now, the census here in the United States allows non-resident illegal aliens who are occupying an apartment or a house and paying a power bill, may not even have a driver's license yet. That person, by their very presence in 19 states in this nation, the blue states, the sanctuary states, are allowed under state law to be able to vote in local, state, and federal elections. To me, I think that's our biggest crime. There was a patent intention of the Biden administration, but admittedly it preceded him under George Soros and some of the Democrat administrations prior. There was an allowance of illegal aliens to be able to vote. The stream of aliens coming in to vote in our election was done with criminal intention by the Democrats, who could not win an election legitimately, but turned around and had to bring in illegal aliens with a few perks and financial guarantees. You heard them coming in with credit cards, a month free rent at the hotel, food provided for them daily for a few months. It was all an effort on the Democrat Party side to bring in people who would blindedly vote Democrat. My grandfather, the patriot, didn't really have a choice. He thought he was coming to a democracy. Oh, I'll become a Democrat then. He didn't know what the difference was between a Democrat and Republican. We're talking 1910 when this kind of thinking was in place. What happened with him and eventually my father is that they realized this pervasive initiative of the Democrats to steal your vote and just get behind. Don't worry about what they're all about. Just vote the way I tell you, is what was going on with these guys. And my grandfather was victim of some of that as well. No longer. The public has been securing more Republican votes recently. The Gen Z crowd, Dave, is unbelievably turning around and registering Republican. But it was a reaction to what we saw from the invasion of our nation, not the invasion of the Capitol on January 6th, but rather the invasion of 20 million people, illegal immigrants, mostly from the southern border, but the northern border as well, entering our nation and having a right to vote. This Second Amendment creates accountability that shows that who is legally entitled to vote and what the criteria is for voting. And then the voting process, another part of that amendment. I could go on, but the biggest problem of all, which is what I see exists across the board in many of the issues outside of citizenship and voting, is some sort of process in our Constitution that penalizes you if you do wrong. Now, I'm not talking you and me doing wrong. There's certainly enough rules on the books with misdemeanor and felony charges that can launch against us anytime. There are laws in place to deter wrongdoing from the citizenship level. But now I move to the magistrate level. What's a magistrate? We created the Third Amendment in this second Bill of Rights called the Supreme Magistrate. It's basically a governing authority to autonomously operate within the Justice Department and subordinated only to the Supreme Court of the United States. While these magistrates are not a separate branch of government, they are an independent, objective, and nonpartisan part of our operation. These are our officials who provide oversight of the government and report only to the citizens of the United States. They are not, here's the key, they are not appointed by any elected official, and they stand apart from any other authority. They are not to be considered bureaucrats or any other layer of government bureaucracy. They oversee and police the efficacy, the legitimacy of the elected officials primarily, appointed officials, and staff related to those elected officials. They are not operating in government. They manage bad behavior, ethics, conflicts of interest, and all the wrongdoing we see within government. Think about it. Where in our system of government is there a penalty? There are civil and criminal penalties that apply to elected officials. I get it. But there's no penalty that singles them out individually for wrongdoing. If they're using the weight, the power, and the force of their office, their position as a magistrate, excuse me, their position as an elected official and staff, to use that power against their political opponent, or to injure that opponent, or to impact the election, that is a misuse or miscarriage of their job as an elected official or appointed official of the government. There's got to be a penalty for doing that. I propose criminal penalties against any elected government official that uses his office to steer an election, to enjoy bribes, to take lobbyists' interests and promote them ahead of the public interest. These are claims that were made against people like Anthony Fauci, which have still not been adjudicated, and Joe Biden himself, who felt the need to pardon his family. I don't think Donald Trump ever pardoned anybody in his family. He did to 1,600 people who ended up being incarcerated from January 6th, 2 years ago. These people have abused the government and the weight and force of the office to go after innocent people who, in the case of January 6th, had the legal right to protest and get on the steps of the Capitol, and many were incarcerated. Some here in Pensacola, Florida, David, who ended up serving 9 months in jail and 3.5 months in solitary confinement, is an absolute sin for expressing your free right to speech. And the person who knew about this was Nancy Pelosi, because Kash Patel, who worked at the Defense Department before becoming our current FBI director, Kash Patel, who was reporting direct to the president, on behalf of the president, went to Nancy Pelosi and said, "Ms. Pelosi, Speaker of the House at the time, are you prepared to accept the president's offer for 20,000 National Guard folks to prevent any riot or unrest at the Capitol?" She turned Kash Patel's offer from President Trump down. And within 24 hours, the stirring of the pot occurred by insiders and the FBI taking orders from Gray at the time, who was taking orders from Pelosi to incarcerate conservative Americans who were simply speaking their mind because they didn't like the outcome of the election of Joe Biden, is a sin unto itself. And so this Third Amendment gives special magistrates the autonomy, David, to charge criminal and civil crimes, indictments for civil and criminal activity against elected officials and their assigns, meaning their appointees, their agency department heads, anybody under their direction and control is subjected to this as well. And we need to put some elected people away in jail for the wrongdoings that occurred. If government becomes a tool that does not allow for free expression of opposing opinion, that's the beginning of the end of a constitutional republic and this form of a democracy.
Yeah, I agree completely. And already in this first 30 minutes, we've covered so much, and I have so many questions. So let's actually stop at the first 3, because I have a lot of questions for you, and then we'll do some follow-up episodes with the next 9. The first question I have for you is this. We have plenty of laws in America The problem is none of them are being enforced. Now, there's like your 11 amendments where we have to refine things because times have changed. Like you pointed out, there was no internet before, right? It was people writing a
Yeah.
newspaper. So the speed in which things happen, the volume, the magnitude, everything has changed. I mean, I think Philadelphia was one of the biggest cities back, when Ben Franklin was around, and there was 30,000 people in it. Okay. I mean, there's small podunk towns with more cows that have 30,000 people in it. So, and I love those towns. I didn't mean that's not an insult. I'm just
That's
saying.
real America.
Yeah, that's real America. I love those towns. I'm just saying tiny in comparison to millions of people in a city. But the enforcement, the laws are there. And these
Yeah.
people, Democrats and Republicans, have been committing crimes for years. And because there is no consequence, they're just doing it blatantly now. And it's sending a sign and a signal all the way down to the children that I can do what the hell I want when I want. Nobody can do a damn thing. And then they scream for free speech and their democratic rights. But yet, if you have an opinion opposed to them, the liberals censor you. And the fact is, they don't want free speech. They want communism. They want selfishness. They want Marxism. And my question to you is this. Maybe it's in your 11 amendments, but how do you think we can actually freaking get stuff done? Because it doesn't matter all the awesome changes that Donald Trump's making right now, everything his cabinet's doing, everything his appointments are doing, all that will be undone if another liberal gets in office and they reverse it. So what can we do to freaking enforce the rules we have? And when, there's so much, Pelosi, that woman is surrounded by darkness and question marks and treason for America. Bill Clinton, Obama, right? And you got a whole list of Republicans too who are complete scumbags taking bribes. They're Republicans in name only. So what can we do to enforce these crimes quickly, put them up for treason, and then if they're found guilty, they're put away for life, and it sends a signal for future generations?
Well, Senator Menendez from New Jersey was recently charged and found guilty and is on his way to prison. His wife was also found guilty as well of receiving bribes, gold bullion and money. The system is rusty, but there is a system in place that does adjudicate wrongdoing even among elected officials now. But to the spirit of your point, the government bureaucracy, which was just overburdened with rules, started in Trump's first administration with, if you're going to write me a new law, eliminate three others. And that's what's happened. They're now even talking now about a complete refinement of the IRS and moving us off an income tax system to a sales tax system, a flat rate. Boy, would that be something. But so what's being done is you're correct. If a liberal gets reelected and takes away and reverses what Donald Trump has been reversing, then we have a problem. We have an inconsistent, destabilized form of government that the tail is wagging the dog, and the foreign nations of the world see instability and say, we're going to make alliances with China, Japan, and other nations, Venezuela, Russia. We're not going to make it with America. They're here today, but not with us tomorrow. It's a complete unstable situation that needs to be remedied. And I suggest that the remedy be through the Constitution of the United States being revised to include this second Bill of Rights we started with. I get carried off, as you can see on it. We only got 3 of the 11 addressed, but it's because there's a lot of thought that's gone into each of them. The point to your question is there are penalties in place that prevent wrongdoing, would include establishing first term limits. Hey, lawyers, hey, congressmen, you want to write a bill? Write a bill for term limits. Cause the congressman and the senator to be subjected to a term limit just the way the president of the United States is. Cause yourself to be more accountable. cause yourself to be penalized if you don't establish a balanced budget each year so that the next fiscal year knows what they're in for instead of all this seesaw erratic behavior. That's how I think we address the problem as you stated, David. Term limits, a balanced budget. It forces wrongdoers to get the hell out of Dodge after they've served a legitimate period of time.
Yeah.
And that's how I think it's handled. I think Trump has motivated people in Congress to get rid of 3 bills before you present a new one. He gave the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, the authority to create one big beautiful bill, as he calls it. Well, the Senate and the House were going to try to split it up into multiple bills, layering in more confusion to what each bill would settle for or settle with. Oh no, let's get it over with once and for all. Donald Trump was correct. It's not that complicated. So they've been working around the clock for a month or 2 months or 3 months now to try to secure one big beautiful bill, which will be coming up in June for an initial vote and review of the House Ways and Means, House budget, and a final vote in the House sometime this summer.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much to it. I understand that. But for years, these politicians, again, both parties, all parties, they're liars and cheats, and they'll have a bill for one issue that takes 3 pages, and they have 57 riders with completely unrelated issues, and it's extortion tactics. That should be outlawed. But let's go back to just simple things. Like, I agree.
Well, what you said right there for a second, it was Nancy Pelosi that said, look, what we do around here under my administration is we just pass the bill and then we read it. They don't read it in advance. They do what we say, not what we do, is what she's saying. You just follow our hidden deep state secretive dirty tricks. Let's get the bill through, and then we'll look at it item by item. That's what we're trying to get away from. And hopefully you can see she's probably on her way out as well.
Yeah, I hope she's on her way to prison. I mean, this is the same woman who's done 1,000 things, has a perfect stock trading record, which no human can unless there's corruption. Yeah. And this is the same woman who said, oh, yeah, this is a great healthcare plan. But as a politician, we're going to be on our own separate carve out because that's not good enough for us. But it's good enough for you, the American people, that pay my salary. So going back, though, active people in office, like the term limits, I agree with what you're saying. But what do you think the solution is for Joe Biden? Right? Okay, the guy, everybody knew he was senile, who was honest before he got office. Then while he was in office, the guy's pooping his diaper. He doesn't know where he is. They're probably shooting him up with more drugs than a racehorse just to get through a 5-minute interview where he's being guided by people. But this dude is not just different in his opinion. I don't care what country you're from. If I go to China and I climb over the Great Wall, they're going to shoot my ass. If I go to any reasonable country, if I go to Saudi Arabia and I'm illegally entering the country, they're going to shoot me. And you know what? If you're sneaking into any country, I think that's appropriate. Okay, you don't have to agree with me. But that's national security. Joe Biden wasn't just ignorant. He was actually committing crimes and allowing our country to be invaded by millions of people. And even if somebody lives in fantasy land that says, oh, they're helpless mothers and children. Okay, 90% of them were terrorists and communists and absolute drug dealers and child traffickers, right? So even if you believe the lie that these are innocent people, which they're not, we can't afford our own Americans. We don't take care of our own veterans. We don't take care of our own single mothers and fathers. We don't take care of our own children in orphanages. And you're taking on these liberals and these invaders for votes. So my question to you is, when Joe Biden is letting in terrorists and flooding our country with millions of illegals, that's an act of treason based on the Constitution and common sense. So why didn't that guy get put in shackles and thrown in prison? Democrats and Republicans are completely responsible in Congress, and I think all of them should be dethroned, held on trial, put in prison, and we should get a new generation of leaders. That's my opinion. But why was that guy not? Why wasn't that guy put in jail?
Yeah, now's the time to create these constitutional amendments I'm talking about. We have a majority in the House and the Senate. We need a little bit more of a margin to allow these constitutional amendments to go through, David. And one of them would address what you just said, and that is a constitutional amendment, on mental cognition, is what disqualifies a president from being president. One issue would be his mental cognition. So here you have Trump doing a open score cognition test that he shares with the public on his health and his performance, and the doctors give him straight A's. You've got the Biden doctors who are hiding the information and wouldn't share any of it with anybody. That to me is grounds. Now, if it's not mental cognition, which would push you out immediately, if what you're doing was intentional and it was fraudulent and felonious, then what you have is an act that is one of treason. But the problem is we don't define, in today's era, the treason is defined as a felonious act compromising American security and sovereignty that results in the penalty of lynching or a hanging. I don't think we're going to hang a president in our lifetime for felony wrongdoing. However,
if we did, they'd stop the shenanigans.
Well, I do believe prison and a permanent prison time would be appropriate. And the question is your point's made. Do you want to, inject them with drugs and let them fall asleep? And that's a murder. That's killing them as well. The question is, where do you draw the line, and what do you want the penalty to be to a president who has intentionally acted against the greater good of you and me and the citizens who hired him? Is a legitimate question. I would like to see it in this second Bill of Rights. Funny thing, it's not one of the 11. I thought at the time defining a citizen and voting and term limits and a magistrate to penalize people who are doing wrong things and there's other things in there, was a pretty far reach to begin with. An act of treason, as you've described, requires a new definition and a new penalty. I agree with you. We need a penalty in place for serious wrongdoing, intentional wrongdoing by a president that is hurting the nation. And I welcome that as the 12th Amendment to the Geno's second Bill of Rights.
I'll help you write that one, because I'm telling you, man, I don't care if it's a senator. I don't care who it is. I think, for the public, they call it polygraph, right? But I mean, a truth serum, a polygraph test, they have tests that are 99.999% accurate that they use for security clearances.
That's right.
All the politicians should have to take it. And if they fail, they can't be a politician. And if they fail because they've committed acts of treason, they should be in prison for life or held to the constitutional standard of a public hanging. And people think, oh, that's insane. Why? If you enforce laws, and these people are bad people, they're doing bad things. Women and children in America and men are getting murdered, raped, and killed because these people like Joe Biden are letting in the fentanyl. They're letting in the terrorists. They're doing tons of financial crimes. But I know a guy who's U.S. Border Patrol on the Canadian border. We don't hear about the Canadian border much. The news doesn't talk about it. He was told not to arrest anybody. Just let him go through under Joe Biden. This is even worse, Gene. or you will lose your job or go to jail.
Wow.
So he took a 3-month vacation, bought houses and was repairing and flipping them up, paid vacation from the US government because Biden didn't want Border Patrol doing their job. And it is a sick, sick, sick form of treason. And you're taking good Americans and breaking their spirit, breaking their minds. And they're like, what the hell am I going to do? Coming from the president down, my boss is corrupt. The senators are corrupt. And if I stand up like January 6th, there's a peaceful protest, they have one protest and they go to jail and they're labeled as these terrible people. Like Gene, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, he has a great podcast, the GrassRoots TruthCast. And was his name Jesus? What was the gentleman you had on from Pensacola that was part of the January 6th that he was arrested?
That's who I was referring to earlier, Jesus Rivera. Jesus, I forgot what the middle D is. He goes by J.D. Rivera, and he was the one incarcerated and put in solitary confinement for, it was about 3 months out of his 9-month stay in detention without a trial. He never had a trial. He was just charged and put in solitary, along with 1,500 others.
So the Pelosi's, the AOC's, these liberal bastards who do nothing but commit real treason, oh man, you even put a shadow of fear in them, they're going to arrest you and throw away the key without trial. It's wrong.
Boy, you're hitting the nail on the head. That is one of the sore spots. And I tell you what, the J6 crowd, I meet with several of them periodically, locally and nationally, and some are running for office. Congress and others have been very vocal in their anti-Biden behavior, which put them in jail in the first place. And you'll see more of the January 6th crowd in the future. The trick is to get a supermajority in the House and the Senate to get constitutional amendments passed to save us from going through the Convention of States process and getting states nationwide to come forward is a very cumbersome issue state by state. Instead, this is our one chance in over 100 years where we've had Republicans as majority in both the House and the Senate with a Republican president to secure some amendments to the Constitution, and all we need is just a few more in the House and a few more in the Senate. If that happens, we'll know in the midterm elections. And if in the midterm elections that happens, we have the ability to get constitutional amendments passed, some of which David was kind enough to reference you too on my website, genevalentino.com. Look at Gene's second Bill of Rights, and you'll see them all right there. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll have a follow-up episode as long as you have the time, Gene, to go through the rest of your amendments. But ladies, some of you, like we call our show Politics and Religion. Some of you are like, how can you be a Christian and say these things? Well, you know what? The attributes of God and the attributes of Jesus and the attributes of the Holy Ghost are different. But if you actually read your Bible instead of talk about religion, throughout the Old Testament and New, God used war to deal with issues. And there's consequence for our actions. Yes, the Lord always forgives when we ask. But that doesn't mean we're always pardoned from our actions and there's not consequences. And there's no time in the Bible where people are pardoned for without repentance. Okay? So if we are called first to serve the Lord, absolutely. But we are also put in America as Americans. We want to love our country. If I was in Israel, I'd love my country. If I was in Russia, I'd love my country. If I was in Brazil, I'd love my country. God put us there for a reason. We should be loving our country and supporting it. But as an American, we have laws. And you don't want to see maybe the dark side. But this isn't just a few bucks. This is trillions of dollars. And when you follow the evil, it really is. It always goes back to sex trafficking and rape and murder and drugs. Horrible parts of the world you don't want to see because you want to drink your $37 coffee and go to church once a week and say how you love Jesus. but we need to act like it and support God and support our country. So if you don't want to be the bad guy, so to speak, and actually confront people, at least vote and support people who will. Because our country has been given away by the lack of action of the quote unquote good people in the country because they're sick of it. And I get that. And I'm sure Gene does too. You got 10% complete scumbags, 10% doers, and 80% just float. But that 80% needs to step up like Gene's talking about, get that super majority so we can clean up this filthy, filthy cesspool, drain the swamp, and actually get congressmen and women in there who aren't going to flip flop based on the mood of the people. And that's the big difference between a democracy and a republic. Our founding fathers were wise enough to know that a democracy will always fall because it's based on the whims of the people. The republic has that layer of protection with those representative government to keep people from being swayed that easily. Swaying the people, crucifixion of Jesus, anyone? So, Gene, I'm going off, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, at the end of the day, if people don't stand up and enforce our laws and protect our country, it's lost, right?
Well, that's why America has survived as long as it has, with all its pimples and warts and all the self-deprecation we go through criticizing ourselves. It's still the best governance in the world. You know, other democracies, which are called more parliamentary democracy, I'll pick on Great Britain. We didn't know who the next prime minister would be. It was picked by a cabal, a inner circle of people within a parliament. The public didn't vote for Tony Blair, for example, or Margaret Thatcher. The parliament did. It has its blessings, it has its curse. It's very much like how Speaker Mike Johnson was picked by the House and how Senator John Thune was picked by the Senate. They weren't picked by you and me. You and I picked the congressmen and the senators that picked them. You and I more directly picked a president of the United States without any intervention, and that's the constitutional republic that David's referring to. And I think that's why we've survived. But with it comes some baggage. And some of the baggage is that when we make mistakes, we need some time to fix it. And that's what we're going through right now. I think the most miraculous thing, which turns this from political to spiritual, is that Donald Trump has virtually borders on sainthood with me, because he has turned out to be a leader that has come back. I don't know why. By the grace of God, he chose to. But do you notice one thing? Most of the people in his cabinet and his administration who he picked were people around him that are near half his age. Why? Because he's trying to build a cabal to protect his little power control issues like Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, and 6 more, all Hakeem Jeffries, the AOC crowd. They're all trying to protect their power. In the Republican environment, with its faults, admittedly, there is a greater good to protect you, the citizen. You, the citizen, come first. And as a result, you're seeing that their actions are speaking louder than their words. And these are the kinds of people that Donald Trump has picked around him. Why? Because he wants to hand off this constitutional republic, this form of democracy, to the new Gen Zers and to those that follow behind them. A new generation of people who will carry the torch and protect this democracy for posterity. That is the secret sauce as to what he's done. I would only say, David, that before we leave, I would love to see a Mount Rushmore with Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan someday, not this expansion of the existing Mount Rushmore, but maybe a separate slab or cliff on the canyon somewhere for Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan. because truly, and it's worthy of a separate episode, truly, they saved America.
Yeah, no, I agree. And not because you're saying, I'd never say anything unless I believed it. But like, I believe that Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln were the two best presidents we've had to date. And if
Yeah.
Trump continues to fulfill what he set out to do, he will take place as the greatest president of all time and potentially one of the greatest leaders of all time. I mean, you have greats throughout history, but to turn, like, I don't think people understand because we're so damn comfortable, but we still are. We're this close to losing the control and moral fabric of our nation to psycho degenerates who only care about themselves and money. They will literally sacrifice anybody, even their own family, just so they can get ahead. Biden, as scumbag as he is, in a weird way, I'm like, what do you do with his son, Hunter? But pardoning him. 100% wrong. No one should ever do that. I would never do that. As much as I love my son, it's wrong. But at least it shows he still has like a grain of some form of loyalty. But then at the same time, knowing how corrupt he is, it's probably because he doesn't want his son turning testimony on him and putting him up. So it's all connected. Jill's, connected. Joe's connected. They're all scumbags. But at the end of the day, we just need to do the right thing. And like stuff like this, like I love our governor, right? And our senator, they're senators, all right. Rick Scott's okay. DeSantis, I love. But they still let shenanigans go on because you can't do everything at once. So like the power in Florida, the power companies are absolutely ruining people's lives. They're triple and quadrupling rates over the last 5 years. And they actually made written promises they wouldn't do that, and they're doing it anyways. This is where all the money and greed and power, they corrupt. And all the lobbyists are part of the problem. And all these spineless politicians who either don't care and take the bribe and shut their mouth, or they're afraid of what's going to happen to them because there's real physical threats to them and their family.
Oh, yeah.
But like the FPL in Florida, that's just one example. They came in, they bought Gulf Power, and nobody's done a damn thing. And there's old people, young people who can't afford their power bill. And in the middle of the Florida, they can't use their air conditioning because they can't afford to pay the bill. And FPL's running ads and commercials. Gene, let me ask you a question. You want to make a law? Not you, but like people want to, I don't think we need more laws. We need to enforce the ones that we have. But ladies and gentlemen, think about this. Florida Power and Light, we're going to pick on them because I hate them. They know where you live. They provide your power. They have your phone number. They have your mailing address. They have your email address. And frankly, they're a monopoly. Why the hell are they running ads on TV? Because you understand the millions of dollars those ads cost? Who do you think's paying for them? Us. There should be no allowance. They should not be able to run an ad on TV, Gene, in my opinion, because what are they advertising for? All they're doing is doing ads so they can get tax write-offs, so they can post more profit for their stockholders. So again, they're sacrificing the masses of the population for greed and corruption. And then our useless politicians are allowing it to happen. What are your thoughts on that? Am I far off?
Well, that's an example. That's part of Trump's effort on deregulation. He's been focusing on windmills and some of the craziness in solar power. But the fact still remains is there's a desperate need for deregulation and less laws for monopoly. That's for sure. There are monopolies that deserve some regulation because we don't need 6 telephone poles from 6 power companies going up and down the street competing against each other. So there is logic with certain monopolies. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have oversight and properly regulating them. And regulating them would be for them to provide incentives for homeowners to save more on their energy bill, including solar. As you know, I have solar on my house, and here in Florida, we're one of the few states that the solar energy I'm not using in my house feeds back onto the grid, and I enjoy selling it back to Florida Power and Light at the same price I bought it for. To me, that's reasonable. Discounted fees for the sale. If I bought it for $1 and I sell it back to you for 60 cents or 50 cents, is not reasonable. And it's if there were competitive issues involved, I could see I might lose that battle. But because it's a monopoly, that is the only exception to the rule where regulation should be impactful. Here's where irregulation is not impactful. In DEP, environmental protection, the Army Corps of Engineers, all of the environmental services that were first established to protect our environment cost America a fortune. We are the cleanest provider of energy and goods and services in the world, while China builds 50, 60 coal-powered power plants throughout its nation. 50 to 60 new ones, and the burning and smelting of the ores for steel going on in those factories that totally pollute the environment. Mexico to the south of us, causing our Navy SEALs to get sick in the polluted waters Mexico untreats, are examples of other nations needing to step up. No, I don't mind us holding ourselves to a good standard through laws and regulation. What I mind is an environmental protection system that encumbers business and entrepreneurship and the ability for business to grow and compete against the likes of China. And that's where Trump has stepped up, David. That's where he's stepped up and stepped in to remove these layers of regulation. So it's not only the laws we got to get rid of, it's the regulations we've got to get rid of. He did it, the Supreme Court did it recently with the Chevron case, where the Supreme Court just ruled that the Department of Environmental Protection or the other agencies that control development of natural sources of energy cannot overstep, cannot provide penalties, and cannot encumber business from going forward. This was a major leap on the Supreme Court's part to put DEP and Army Corps of Engineers back in place. If we need laws to fix our environment, then Congress itself needs to step up and create a law on it, even though I hate more laws. But that would be their job to do so, not an agency of government that we never elected the people in to be penalizing you and me.
Yeah, and I agree. And the frank issue, the issue is we have so much corruption at so many levels. It's like, how do you eat the elephant? Well, it's one bite at a time. But we got to prioritize the crime, so to speak, and fix it. But like, even with all this environmental stuff we were just talking about, it always frustrated me because if you think about this, I own a restaurant. I don't, but I'm saying hypothetically, I own a restaurant. At the end of each day, I got to get rid of my oil. To properly process it based on the standards the government sets out, which are 90% corrupt, it's going to cost me $20,000 a day to process that oil. I'm making up numbers. But I can pour it down the drain, and if I get caught, there's a $500 fine. That's is right. What the oil companies do every day. It would cost them millions of dollars to process the waste, but they want to make it look good in the public with the politicians and the news media for the public. So they're like, okay, this would cost you $30 million a day. We're going to fine you if you get caught $500,000 and you just happen to help my kid go to college. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so corrupt. So that's what I'm saying. I think if we don't drop the hammer in every area at once, I don't think it's going to end. But that's my opinion.
Your opinion's good, and I think it's accurate. And look what's happened in the last 120 days with Donald Trump. He had four successes going in the last 72 hours on different fronts. Every time I turn around, they jokingly use the metaphor moving a mountain. He's moved a mountain.
Yeah, and let's talk about the tariffs. Okay,
Yeah.
for anybody who says they're an expert, I'm an expert, I go to Harvard, I go to Yale, you're an idiot. Because if you were fighting the tariffs, look what's happened. We had like tariffs where we were being charged 150%, 200%. And now they're like, okay, we'll charge you 10%. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that Donald Trump just took our tariffs from 150 to 10% in a lot of areas in a lot of countries. So that means that savings should be passed on to the consumer. So he's helped our economy. So I don't care if you're a liberal, I don't care if you're a conservative. If you don't look at facts, 2 + 2 is 4, you're a freaking moron. What Donald Trump's doing is helping our country, and he's forcing these negative contracts that Biden and Obama and Clinton and generations of corrupt politicians set up for America. I mean, that's my opinion. What's yours, Gene?
Well, on that point, David, I think this is the division between church and state, and we have a moral opinion on many of these things. But the fact is, he used the tariffs to stir the pot. It was like the old redneck fisherman throwing the grenade into the pond, and all the fish come bubbling up. He dropped a grenade in the pond, and he's got the attention of every nation in the world, including China. He's striking tariff deals that have spooked Wall Street. Well, Wall Street doesn't need to be spooked. The anti-Tesla, anti-Elon Musk people protesting and damaging Tesla facilities and Tesla cars said that within a few weeks, the Tesla stock would be pouring down the drain with no value. The Tesla stock has gone up $50 a share since Elon got involved in Doge. And that's what he's done as well. We didn't talk about it. Doge being important to address many of these crazy issues that Congress itself has not addressed. Why is it that Trump had to put Doge in place? Because Congress itself was looking the other way on all these issues. That's why we need term limits. That's why we need a balanced budget. And that's what were 2 of the 11 items in my constitutional amendments, my second Bill of Rights, that need to be addressed in a Republican majority House and Senate with a Republican president in the next 2.5, 3 years. David, I know we're running out of time. I just want to put a plug in. If they can find all of this and subscribe at www.genevalentino.com, please subscribe there. David works with me, folks, in producing many of the episodes on Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast. We have my interviews that occur weekly now with my appearances on Newsmax. And we have the appearances like this we're doing with David today on our own podcast. And then I have WMXI, a radio station network of radio stations in Mississippi that we post on the site as well. David's been very helpful in helping me get Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast off the ground. For that, I thank you, David, for your effort in helping me do that.
Oh, always, man. Thank you for just fighting for America. And ladies and gentlemen, whether you agree or disagree, we can still be friends. Write me, say you love me, say you hate me. Write Gene, let us know what your thoughts are. If you have ideas on how to fix problems, let's do it. And I mean, we are going to do more episodes. Hopefully, Gene, we can follow up and do more topical episodes, but we definitely want to have you back to cover the other amendments and how they tie into today. And then, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you share this. Maybe think about it, pray about it. Some of the things we said, like, oh man, to kill somebody, that's horrible. That's unbiblical. I don't know. Is it really?
Well,
Like, there's people who really cause a lot of problems in the world and they are guilty of their crimes. Should we continue to let them be in power and live and continue to hurt people? What does that say about you? Where's the accountability in your life and my life if we continue to let people do evil?
Yeah, we all have to be accountable, including me. I got to go to an appointment.
Get out of here, man. We love you, ladies and gentlemen. We love you too. We'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.
Thanks for joining us for Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast. Be sure to like and subscribe, and God bless America.